Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the September 10th Recovery Task Force to order at 4 p.m. and I'd like to take a roll call. So please unmute and say here when I call your name. Jason? You're giving us a good chuckle, Jason. Come on, you can do it.
The WebEx keeps changing everything. Yes, I'm here.
Glad you're here. Marisol?
Here.
Mike?
I'm here.
Nina Milligan has an excused absence today. Pavel Aparkian has an excused absence. Not sure if Sam is going to be here today. Trish?
Here.
Thank you. Brookie has an excused absence, as does Grace and Janine. And so Shashi, next.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Marlene, who is an alternate, sitting in for a regular member today.
Here.
And I haven't seen if Ron or Stephanie have joined. Have I?
I'm here.
Oh, great. Thanks, Ron. Awesome. So I'd like to acknowledge the staff that's participating in today's call. We have City Administrator Wally Bobkowitz, and we have Executive Assistant Joanne Biscara managing the meeting for us, as well as Gabe, who is recording it all for us. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and these minutes are from August 13th, 2020. And is there any objection to approving the August 13th, 2020 meeting minutes, which were provided in the online agenda?
No.
Great. Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved as presented. And Joanne, has anybody signed up to speak under public comments today?
No, nobody has.
Thank you, Joanne. So we're going to go through reports, which we have none to present this evening. And now we'll move to our regular agenda items. And the one item that we have today is a recovery plan discussion. And I'm going to turn this over now to City Administrator Bobkowitz to take us through this conversation. Wally.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the task force. Good afternoon. At your last meeting, you challenged the staff, I think, to kind of turn the page and begin to look at an element that we've not focused on thus far with the task force, and that is recovery. And so what I'd like to do this afternoon is present to you with some ideas that we've been working on with Mayor Pauly and the staff over the last few weeks, and really just to get your feedback. This is the first airing of these ideas in public, and so we're just trying to get a sense from the task force today. Are we on the right track? Are there things that you would emphasize more than others, things that we've overlooked? So I've got about 10 or 15 slides, and then would really look forward to your feedback and participation. So let me share my screen.
While you're doing that, Wally, I just want to let everybody know that Stephanie has joined us now.
All right. Joanne, can you see the PowerPoint? Great, thanks. So when the task force started up several months ago, one of the areas that you wanted to focus on as an area of focus was post-recovery planning. And as we've looked at this over the last few weeks, the first question really comes, is this post-recovery? Are we at a stage that's anywhere close to post? I guess I will venture my opinion to say no, that we're really not in a post phase, but are we at a point where we need to start looking at a recovery? And I think the answer certainly to that is yes. So one question for the task force to consider is there a planning process that's an intermediate step that perhaps for the next 6, 9, 12 months that we would call something other than post-recovery, pre-recovery, something like that? Because as we go through the themes that we've identified, I think there's certainly work that needs to be done, some of which is building on things that we've already done, some of which are some new areas that I think we need to consider. So what I'd like to share is kind of a review of the recovery task force's areas of focus that were adopted several months ago, then also bring up a couple of additional key issues, and then talk with you more about next steps. So when the task force first started, there were 6 areas that were identified: economic recovery, communications, community health, human services, post-recovery planning, and community engagement. We've given you at the last meeting, I think, a good overview of where we stand with each of these 6 areas, some of which have been more an area of focus than others. Things like communications were very important at the very onset of the pandemic. We've tried to be consistent with that, but certainly there was a focus at the beginning. Issues of community health, again, were identified very early on, and because of the length of this situation we find ourselves before, now a lot has changed on the community health side. We've seen other issues with these other points. So as the staff and the mayor have looked at these priority areas of focus, really 3 stand out as being sort of key points for further work. 1 is economic recovery, 2 is community health, and 3 are human services. So as we look to plan in the future, either pre-recovery, recovery, post-recovery, whatever we might want to call it, of those 6 points, I think those 3 are worth some additional discussion and thought this afternoon. In the area of economic recovery, as I think you all know, we've done a lot of work in the last several months to continue to support local retail businesses and restaurants. That work will continue. We are looking at a plan right now to help in the winter as far as outdoor dining for restaurants. The city's received about $500,000 in additional CARES Act funds from the state of Washington, and so we are looking at spending some of those dollars there. The second area, job training. We've seen historic losses in jobs nationwide, regionally, statewide. Does the city of Issaquah have a role in job training? Does the city of Issaquah have a role in working with our partners, both public and private, as far as job training, job placement? And so that's, I think, an issue that's worth talking about further. 3 is gaps in retail businesses, restaurants, and services. Something that certainly I did not expect to happen by the length of all this is that we have many Issaquah residents now working from home. They work in businesses that have the luxury to be able to work from home. So rather than travel to Seattle or Redmond or Kirkland or other parts of the region to go to work, they're working here in Issaquah. And while they may have gone to lunch in Seattle, use service businesses in Seattle if they were going to Seattle every day to work, since they're not, they are likely looking to replace those businesses. So do we know as a city, as a community, are there gaps in any of these businesses? And as we continue to support our existing businesses, is there an opportunity for some very targeted identification of businesses, restaurant services that we don't have in Issaquah that would be welcome by our local residents and then would be patronized by our local residents? Next is the changes in corporate offices. Many people are working from home. Many companies in the region have announced that they are rethinking their officing plans for their employees. Amazon recently sent a survey to all of their Seattle area employees asking about communities that they might rather work in, and Issaquah was on that list. So are there companies thinking about looking for space here in Issaquah? REI has announced that they're not going to be using their corporate offices that they've just constructed. Amazon has announced at least, 25,000 new jobs coming to Bellevue. So all those changes that were not anticipated 6 months ago, 12 months ago, are issues. And do we need to play a role as a community in thinking about that? And are there some proactive things we can do there? And then finally, on the area of economic recovery, changes in transportation needs. The city has been working on a mobility master plan almost for 2 years that was based in a world that no longer exists. And so as we look in transportation needs, what can we do to continue to support bus transportation that is here? What do we need to be doing to work with Sound Transit on their plans for bringing light rail to East King County and ending the line here in Issaquah? What can we do with with smaller transportation issues. And quite honestly, are people ready to go back to public transportation? And do we need to be creative in thinking about the impacts of people using their car more, at least in a shorter, medium term, to get to where they need to go? So is there a role for the city to be thinking in those areas in regards to recovery? Next is the area of community health. We spent a lot of time very concerned about this initially. We were fortunate to have representatives from the county and from Swedish Hospital come speak to us several weeks ago. They continue to support the idea of people wearing masks, people washing their hands, and people keeping a social distance between each other. The city has been very diligent about continuing to keep those messages alive. Are there other things we should be doing regarding COVID-19 health awareness? Hopefully there will be a vaccine available soon. What can we do as a community to be prepared for that? Next is the steps to support business resumption. We've certainly done that as far as streetery is concerned. Many businesses have been following the lead of King County and the Washington State on what they need to be doing, but are there other things we can do from a health perspective to support business resumption? And then finally, are there additional steps we should be considering on the community health basis to support community activity resumption? People want to be out, they want to be doing things. At some point, we will move to stage 3 and stage 4 of the governor's reopening plan, and what can we be thinking about to support the larger community in these community health issues. And then the last area of focus that the task force has worked on, which I think is important to be planning for in the future, are issues of human services. We've worked extensively in the area of food and shelter needs, especially in the area of food needs, working with nonprofits. Mayor Pauley, very early in the pandemic, convened a community collaborative, which continues to meet, that deals with food issues, food safety issues, making sure that everyone has the food that they need. Certainly those issues are not going away and will continue. And how should we be thinking about pivoting to continue to support organizations that support our residents in the area of food and shelter? Affordable housing. I think the first issue with affordable housing is people being able to keep the housing that they have. The Issaquah City Council has spent quite a bit of time in the last few months talking about rental assistance, talking about assistance for folks who might be evicted. There are currently different moratoria out there regarding evictions, both at the state level and the federal level. The Issaquah City Council is considering its own ordinance dealing with evictions and how to assist people. But my curiosity to the task force is, are there other things we should be doing in the short and medium term in the issues of housing and affordable housing? And then finally, direct health services. While the city of Issaquah is not in the direct health service business, certainly there are other needs in the community that have been brought about by the pandemic. Certainly mental health was an issue very early on. It continues to be something that we're concerned about. And so are there initiatives that the city should be thinking about and developing regarding other direct health services? There are two other categories I'd like to add for consideration in talking with Mayor Pauley and the members of our team. Really, there are two others that I think really jump out as we look at the pre-recovery, post-recovery, what to focus on over the next 6 to 12 months. And one of those areas is quality of life. People come to Issaquah, people live in Issaquah for very specific quality of life purposes. Some of those aspects of our community we've not been able to foster and attend to because of budget issues, because of our restrictions during the pandemic. And so what should we be focused on to make sure in areas of quality of life that we are investing money in to make sure people continue to want to live, work, and play here in Issaquah? And so first and foremost of those is our parks and open space. We've had to cut back this year on staffing resources for park maintenance. We are looking at the budget for 21 to restore some of those positions, so to make sure that our parks and our open space are well maintained and well tended to. Next is infrastructure. We have largely paused many of our infrastructure investments. And what can we do? What are the priorities in the community to reinvest in that? Certainly street infrastructure, which requires a very significant annual investment, is something we have pulled back on during 2019, are looking to restart that in 2020. And then on the private side of infrastructure, we continue to hear frustration regarding internet. infrastructure. That is, people have worked from home, people are going to school at home, that the private sector internet, Comcast, other providers in the community, CenturyLink, the other provider in the community, are not keeping up. And while we have been very diligent keeping on Comcast, and they are continuing to make new investments in Issaquah, is there more pressure we should be putting on those private sector utilities? Next, our community facilities. Many of them have been closed. The pool is reopened. The community center remains closed. What investments should we be making in those community facilities? Are there changes we need to make to those community facilities in light of changes in our community? Our community programs and events have largely come to a halt. What focus should we be looking at in the future to increase those events or change those events? And then finally, issues of equity and diversity, while not directly related to the pandemic, certainly have been issues on the minds of community members because of recent events. And so how can we continue to weave issues of equity and diversity into our provision of quality of life? And then finally, the final area that I think is worth discussion for planning is one that's very focused on the city government. We are looking at our budget for next year, fiscal 21, and while by the cuts we made early in the pandemic, we think that we'll be okay for next year. We're still going to be dozens of positions less next year than we were that were authorized for 2020, and we are concerned about our ability to continue to provide those quality services with the revenue that we're receiving. Sales tax remains down, business and operation tax collection remains down. So how can we continue to have fiscal sustainability to provide the services that our community needs? Are there things we should be looking not to do? Are there additional revenue opportunities? I think that's where the public discussion. Next, public safety. A big part of our budget, both the Issaquah Police Department and our contract costs to Eastside Fire and Rescue. Is there additional community discussion interested in that? From a cost perspective, there's been lots of discussion this spring and summer regarding the role of our police department, and Mayor Pauly's budget, which will be released on the 29th. I think we'll address some of those issues, but that's a dialogue that we'll likely have to continue. And then finally, our city offices and facilities. Our city offices have been closed since mid-March. Our office-based staff have largely worked from home, with a few exceptions. Certainly our police department continues to be officed, other staff members, but over half of our staff members are working at home. And so as we look at our office needs, we began 2020 looking very specifically at City Hall Northwest, our facility that holds our public works, engineering, and community planning and development staff, about making some changes with that facility. We're now thinking, is there an opportunity to put all city offices under one roof once again? And what are the costs associated with that? And quite honestly, what's the priority for the community? If we're doing well working from home, how much energy and effort should we be putting back in reconfiguring our offices and facilities? So it's certainly a question that we need to answer. And I think depending on what that answer is, there's certainly cost implications for us. So, Madam Mayor, members of the task force, those are the areas, the 5 areas that I think make sense to be part of a plan. Again, looking for task force feedback today on those particular areas, looking for feedback on what kind of community involvement might be needed, or are there surveys that we need to do? Are we looking at a written plan? Are we looking at a plan that is an intermediate plan that would take us maybe 6 or 9 months before we would actually do a post-recovery plan? So I'm really interested in getting some feedback from members of the task force on that. Are there other ways for us to capture these ideas and express these ideas? And then finally, in the midst of all this, we have been working on the fiscal 2021 budget. Mayor Pauly will be presenting that to the City Council on September 29th. And so some of the issues that we've talked about will be addressed there, and perhaps Mayor Pauly would be useful to have Beth Goldberg, our finance director, come to the task force's next meeting in October to talk a little bit more and specifically about those areas that impact this planning. So hopefully this has been at least an opportunity to spur some conversation. Again, post-recovery planning, is this really post-recovery planning, or is it something else? So, Madam Mayor, please offer whatever thoughts or comments you have, and then certainly we're both available, you and I, to answer questions and get the feedback from the task force.
Thank you, City Administrator Bobkowitz. I think it's a great suggestion that we bring our finance director next time, because it really sets the table for where we are financially as an organization. And that was a lot of information to ask for feedback on. Did you want to, what I'd like to do is go around the group and give everybody an opportunity to talk and about how they imagine the next 6 months or 9 months, or how far they think we should be looking out. But if you could maybe leave that last slide up where you poked people with a few questions, maybe we can just start with that, and we'll just go around the horn and see what everybody says in terms of what they think this means. Second last slide, I think, actually. Right. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody show up in the chat. I want to make sure everybody's not worried about how to answer some of these questions, because none of us have done this before. There's no wrong input or no wrong feedback. Anything that you want to talk about, and maybe let's start first with community involvement and surveys. And I also liked Wally's question about how far ahead do you think we should be planning? This totally did not work. You know, we heard initially that we have a 2-month pandemic and then we will be coming out on the other side. Well, we're 6 months in and we're not coming out on the other side. I'm going to start with Ron. Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to Administrator Bobkowitz, question about how this affects the MMP, the Mobility Master Plan. Is it too soon for us to be implementing or making changes to the MMP policy and policy development, because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID? Maybe 2 years out, we are in a full recovery and things are back to normal in terms of traffic patterns and so on. And if we take things out of the MMP now, thinking that COVID is going to have a significant impact and we're wrong, then are we going to be at a disadvantage? And I'm not looking for a direct answer. I'm just thinking, do we really want to be looking at potential policy change in the MMP right now based on COVID?
And I thanks for the question, and it's certainly something that we have talked about internally. I think the City Council has talked about and has reviewed that. For those members of the task force who may not be familiar, the city has a transportation advisory board which was tasked about 1.5 years ago with working on a mobility master plan to look at basically how people get around. It has projects, has bricks and mortar infrastructure projects in it. It has policies regarding transit, regarding parking, regarding different modes of mobility, and the group has come to a conclusion with that work. And one of the questions that, as Ron has mentioned, is the world we're living in today the same world in which that plan was written? And largely the answer is no, but that doesn't negate many of the things that are in the plan. And I think, as the council has talked about, and Mayor Pauly, I'm sure, can amplify these remarks as well, that there are pieces to it that make sense to start working on now. We would not have the ability to take on everything in that plan simultaneously. So I believe the mayor's plan, and she can speak to this as well, is once the plan is adopted, that the Transportation Advisory Board's work really just gets started, and that we will need their help to prioritize what we can do in the short and medium term and not get all caught up in things that we know won't make sense to make investments in given the changing landscape. Mayor Pauly, is that about right?
Thank you, Wally. That was good. I was on the council when the first goal came up to do this mobility master plan, and even though we're at a very strange place right now, and it'll be unsettled for, like you said, Ron, maybe a couple more years. The basics of the plan and the policies in there, for the most part, do shine a light on where we want to go. I believe that the plan can evolve as we get more information about the economic situation, how Sound Transit is doing, how King County Metro is doing. But I do think the work that's being done now is very, very valuable. So I'm very much in favor of moving through those policies, adopting them into the comp plan, and committing to adjusting as necessary as our reality changes. It's entirely possible that Sound Transit will complete all of their ST3 packages, including the portion that Issaquah covers. So I want to go with what we know, which isn't very much right now, but I would say the work should continue, and we'll adjust as we need to. I'm very appreciative of the work that the Transportation Advisory Board did, and I know Planning Policy Commission, which you sit on now, has some work to do too. But let's think more than 2 years out. Let's think, there's going to be new technology that comes as well over the next decades. And so we will adjust as we can. So I think it's good to continue. Great question. I'm going to head over to Marisol, who has a comment for the group.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a few comments, and the first one I have been thinking is where they were talking about the COVID health awareness. I feel that we know how to keep ourselves healthy and home. We have a little bit of an idea, but there is not enough information about what happened when you already have it and what you should be doing. And especially there is not a lot of information in to provide to other cultures, other languages. So I feel that there's a need in there to provide that awareness on. I mean, just to set an example, I know of families who have got it and they didn't know if they had to go to the hospital, if they had to go to their doctor, if they had to be home, when to go, things like that. And it's very simple. And, there is a ton of information online, and then yet there is the people who needs it, they don't have it. So that's just one comment on that. And then another thing that I've been thinking a lot about it is just the families that are newly in our city, families who moved just before this all started and have no connections with anyone. How are they working? How are they connecting with people? Like there are no places where they can connect with anyone because they cannot go to school, they cannot go to a park and meet anyone, and there are groups online, but you have to know about those groups in order to get in, if that makes sense. People who have to work and they are looking for affordable childcare services. I feel like there is a lack of childcare centers for people who cannot afford it, and honestly, they are staying home, and this is making it harder for them to come back to whatever their standard of living was. And although I know there is not much that can be done, I feel like connections are needed to be done so families can feel, to create a little pot, educational pot or just childcare pot in our community. But people don't know how to, and then there is not enough information on how to go about that. I have a few other, I don't want to take a lot of time, so if there's anybody else who wants to say anything, but the job training also speak highly to me because I have seen a lot of people just changing their way or their field of work because they got laid off and they had to go and do something else, and they have found that they like that, but they don't know enough. So that's I feel like there's a good opportunity, especially working with the people who need workers right now and how to help them connect with them. Okay, I think for now that's it. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Marisol. Thank you very much. Next on the list, I believe I have Stephanie. Stephanie for a comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two. The first being in regard to TAB and the Master Mobility Plan. I think that everyone's correct that we need to be planning a few years out, but I also think that we need to start adjusting to what Mr. Bobkowitz was talking about. If Amazon is looking, or if Microsoft is looking to move into Issaquah or our surrounding areas, even if they're working from home, restaurants may be affected. But that transportation piece is going to be huge, even if it's a small bolt bus that can go from the Highlands to downtown to the other side of Gilman, and just really planning for light rail, because we're going to have it. We can't get around it. So I know that it's a big chunk of information to work with, but I think that we still need to plan to make those adjustments as fast as possible, and trying to make adjustments for people being downtown on their bikes and walking around more, connecting parks and trail systems, because if we know people are going to be at their house more, they're going to need to get out and just get air. So that's something we should be focusing on. And then secondly, I think job training is huge, especially in the retail and restaurant sections. Restaurants, God forbid, if we get back down to 25%, not a lot of us are going to make it through this, even with our extended patios and streetery, which has been great, and we're super thankful for it. But it's kind of getting bleak for everyone, and we're trying to figure out ways to work around it. But I think having resources for retraining, or just spots to look for ways to use your skills in another job. If you can work in a restaurant, you can do almost anything. It's just time management and project planning. But being able to think outside the box and having resources for that, I think would be huge. And even if it's, a list of the city for, a couple job groups to talk to, or, any hands-on training that they could virtually do, I think would be huge. But just kind of planning out for that. I'm just really nervous that we're going to have a lot of extra hands-on people that are looking for jobs that may not be available.
Great comments, Stephanie. Thank you very much. And I'm hearing sort of two buckets of comments. Some are the further out ones, like what we should be thinking about for 2 years, but also a lot of this little interim period that we're in right now. So thank you guys for doing that. I think Mike Brennan is up next.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. A lot of, like you said, a lot of information just got put up on the table by Administrator Bachowitz, and a lot of good early thinking, I think, on trying to organize this. So I think we are still in the response mode when it comes to dealing with the pandemic, and we don't know what the end looks like yet. So we're still anticipating what changes are going to come from all of this. What's the economic impact going to be overall? How's it going to impact housing situations for individuals, et cetera? So there's still a lot of work to do in the initial response as we kind of navigate our way through this. This concept of pre-planning for the recovery makes sense to me, since we don't know yet this isn't like a storm or an earthquake where it all happens very quickly and then all of a sudden you're starting to clean up and recover. We don't know what the other end looks like yet. So this notion of trying to gain information and look ahead, and as it starts to become clearer about when the end will be, and we have control of the pandemic and it's on its downward trajectory. So the idea of reaching out and getting information from business community through surveys from residents, et cetera, to inform some of the decision making about what recovery might actually look like. Because in a lot of ways, we don't know yet what we're going to be dealing with in the recovery mode when we get there. We're all anticipating. How's it impacting transportation? How's it impacting housing? Are there going to be vacant, spaces that need to be re-tenanted or repurposed? So I think that thinking is good. The long view, I think, obviously, as some of the previous comments we're speaking to, is also a lens that we need to keep on the work. The transportation, planning, housing, and growth in the city, and all of that is all going to play into the economics. It's also going to play into providing affordable and available housing at all levels for people. So those long-range pieces of work are still important to advance as a city. I mean, you're going to do it anyway. It's just the complexion is a little different now and how we're trying to respond. So I do think we are in this kind of pre-recovery place and continuing to get information that will inform what recovery strategies will make sense. We can anticipate some of that now, but it seems like we still need to keep our attention to response in the moment because it's still dramatically impacting business and people. So I guess that's my response to the questions that were on the table. And obviously there are lots of details underneath what pre-recovery planning might look like.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Mike. We definitely have many, many stages to response, which is different than a natural event disaster like you're talking about. And I had written down maybe we're mid-stage response, maybe we're late-stage response, but we don't even know where we are on that time yet. And so calling it planning pre-recovery and planning for recovery, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. Thank you. I don't see anyone else signed up for comments, but I'd like to give others a chance to weigh in too. So I'll give a few seconds to see who else would like to provide some input. Let's go to Trish.
Yeah, and I agree with everybody that there was a lot of information on those slides, a lot of good talking points. And I do believe that we're definitely not in recovery mode. We're almost like phase 2. And what I guess I would like to bring up is maybe things that we can do immediately that maybe we hadn't thought of before. And one thing that has come to mind is I'm starting to see, like I live up here in the Highlands, and I saw a woman with her children by the Safeway with a sign that said she couldn't pay her rent and she needed help. And so I reached out to somebody that knows a lot about what's going on in the community, and I said, well, what do we do now if we see somebody like that, and if we see those occurrences increasing, which we do anticipate? I believe we're going to see those occurrences increasing. And I was told that in the interim, people can call the Food and Clothing Bank and ask for the social worker there, Rebecca, and she will make sure that somebody comes, physically comes to, wherever that person is standing to help them with resources. And so, do you know, can you comment on that, Mary Lou or Wally? I mean, would that be a good, if, can we tell people?
Yeah, I
do
think
that?
that's great. So, community members seeing their neighbors and other community members in distress is very disturbing. And our initial instinct is to try and get them connected with resources. I know the food bank has a person that you can
Right.
call, but I also believe there's a 211 number that is it 211? I'm not really sure, that you can also call as well. But I think what I'm hearing from you is tell us in the community some information. If we see somebody in distress, what options can we provide to them?
Right.
And more communication on that. If you're seeing what you saw today, let's promote what options are available to help.
Yeah, before I would direct anybody to the Food and Clothing Bank, I would, of course, check with Corey first, the executive director, and stuff like that. But yeah, what do we do now? Because we're going to see more of this, I think. Yeah.
Wally, do you want to add to that?
Only to say that the issue of 211 is a very interesting one. For those of you who aren't aware, it's a number. I believe United Way of King County is responsible for it, and I think that's a great challenge for us to see what we can do to be supportive of that service, because it's certainly designed to do exactly is what she said, that people can call it and direct resources. So I think that's something that we'll take as a to-do, and if we have a good answer before now in the next meeting, we'll share it. Otherwise, maybe we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Trish, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I wanted to say I really liked Marisol's list.
Yes.
I thought Marisol came up with a lot of good things.
It's really hard when you have to come after somebody who's got a whole bunch of good ideas together. Yes, it's a great list. Really good list. And let's move on to Marlene.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to bucket my comments into sort of those short-term, long-term as much as I can, I think.
Yeah.
On the short term, I think I would say internet. Yes, please help us. I live on Squack Mountain. We talked about this last time, but school has started and there are a lot of people online right now. So I'm glad I can actually see all of you today, but that has not been my experience or my son's experience recently. So yes to that. Also, in the more near term, we've folks in our neighborhood have been starting to talk about Halloween. I know it feels early, but it's going to be a big different one this year. So, any sort of thoughts from the city on, what's safe, what's recommended? Is there a safe way to do Halloween? What does that look like in our community? Would be just something I would bring up to the group as a conversation. I know at least in our neighborhood we're having those conversations already. On the more the idea of people more working from home more often and building community, potentially, is there a way to invite food trucks or something or over those lunch hours, maybe around where the farmers market was, as that sort of winds down? Might that be a fun community way to get people out over the lunch break that's maybe a little bit quicker, but still kind of has a good vibe and can help some local businesses? So that's just an idea on the short term that might work well with the work from home that's happening. Midterm, as it's relating to potential satellite offices and incentives and really roads and traffic. I think for me, really accelerating the idea of Connect Issaquah with the bike routes and pedestrian. I think really accelerating how we, as I think Melanie was saying, where is the parking for e-bikes? Where is the parking for bikes? How are we getting better sidewalks? I think that is, quality of life. It is right on for, what the future of cities should be looking like and what people want out of their cities. And I think that would be a place, as we're looking at what should come back online as we look at budgets, that would be a place I would advocate for acceleration. And then I also liked the idea around what are those partnerships for training as we think about those businesses who want to do business here. How can we also, give them some incentive, but also ask for maybe they do training programs or there's something more long-term there as we think about businesses coming to help us.
That is great. Thank you very much, Marlene. Shashi.
And Madam Mayor, before Shashi goes, maybe if I could just comment on one piece, and I'm putting the information about this in the chat box. But we are having a neighborhood champions meeting on September 22nd at 6 o'clock to talk about a lot of these sort of community interaction issues that we've not been able to do. But the reason we decided to have the meeting was Halloween and what we can do as a community to get the word out about what is a safe way to do that for Halloween. So that information for that meeting, if you're interested, is there. We're going to be sharing some best practices. There is something known as a boo. Is it on here or not? Mayor Polly, can you help me with this? It's not on the. But in some areas, some neighborhoods, and some communities, they do something.
The Boo Project, where you get booed.
Right. So we're gonna try to see if that can gain any traction, and there are things that we could do as a city to help with the signs that people put on their doors once they've gotten their boo thing. And I'm not the best person to speak to it, but anyway, the information is in the chat box for those who are interested.
Thank you for that reminder, Wally. Shashi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Wally, for very good information and everybody else who commented so far. There's a lot to think about, and let me try my best with as short as possible. First of all, I don't think we are definitely out of, or even in the recovery phase of pandemic. I think we have begun the tail, looks like, provided we continue what we are doing so far, don't open anymore, then we might tail off. or close it rather, but not open anymore. So let me address the Halloween very first one, which we were latest discussing. I think this time that Halloween should be more at home, but we can share it on internet, WhatsApp or Zoom or any other app that could really make sense. Because if people go out to have fun, we have to remember this is a temporary phase. It is not going to be like that forever. Imagine the Spanish flu of 1918. It took 2 years. So it will end. Definitely it will end. So yes, I'm for internet. So therefore, we must invest on internet because that's very important now, especially during this time. And then Marisol, you had very good points. I was surprised to know that a lot of families don't have information about what to do when they get COVID. I thought everybody knows by now because there's a lot on TV as well as on internet. So my suggestion to that is maybe these families can be brought with 6 feet distance and mask, of course, with all those, hand washing and sanitizing, maybe to community center or some place where these families could come, or somebody representative of a family of a household could come, and somebody can tell them, in person. Somebody could give a training like what they have to do, like they should go to the doctor as soon as they have symptoms, and tell or even in mail, maybe we can send some kind of brochures or some written information where it says if you have these symptoms, which are listed or very well on the CDC and government websites. There's a huge list including running nose, so simple as that. And I did have running nose, and that time it was not in the list, so I was happy, otherwise I would be very panicked too. So such that they can, as soon as they have any symptom, any flu like symptom, they have to contact their doctor. So that's one. I was wondering if we have or we can make so far what had been the effect of the pandemic on our economy, like a profit loss, what it would be if we didn't have pandemic, and if we have now, how down have we gone in the economy? So it depends how deeper we go, that much more time it would take to recover in future. But I'm 100% sure will be 100% normal. But my only worry is I don't want to see any more deaths at all. Last 3 days, or I think last 2 days, they didn't have put the data. 3 days they didn't. Up to 7th of September, I think 3 days before that, we had no death. And in Issaquah, we have 70% deaths if they're hospitalized. So I don't want to see any more hospitalization. I don't want to see any more deaths. So for that, we should have patience and have our celebrations, maybe in home or just on internet. And there were lots of points I have written. Oh, another thing, as Wally said about Amazon or Microsoft, any big company trying to look for space in Issaquah, definitely it will boom our economy. But we have to consider that our density would increase, and whether beauty of nature will remain the same. We will have to widen our roads, and so many things come with it. So we have to consider that, but I'm always for it. It would be great. And whether in future people will work from office or home, I think it could be like 50-50, because having human to human connection is also very important, not only through Zoom, but also face to face. So maybe it could be partially home, partially office, or given a choice. So we could really cut down expenses on office maintenance then, because our home is always maintained. And I don't know what else, but anyway, so far this is what I have, and I wish we at least continue or close a little more to taper it and have a steep tail as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi. I'm going to go to Stephanie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to piggyback on something that Marlene said. I think food trucks at Pickering would be great. And I think it'd be really fun to maybe alternate, maybe one weekend it's like a food truck roundup, and then one weekend it can be pop-up restaurants from everybody in town, and we could make a competition out of it. And I mean, we don't want to drag a bunch of people all into one space, but if we can distance the way that the market did, we could kind of, I don't know, we could have a fun, stupid little trophy that goes around to everybody, just to try something different and generate not everybody knows what's in Old Town. Not everybody knows what's on the other side of town. But it could just generate a little bit more talking about, hey, let's go support some small businesses.
I like that, Stephanie. I mean, the one thing I'm really concerned about going into fall is that we're still not allowed to have events. However, we still are trying to find ways to get people outside in a safe way. And so having something like a walk through food truck place where people come on their own, but we advertise it ahead of time and there's enough there that it brings people back outside again, I think that'd be great. And the same with, I love the idea of doing something in Old Town, something weather protected outside where, maybe we use salmon days tables or whatever, but we do this and you can come and get food from very different places and still be safely seated and still be weather protected. Weather protection is a big concern of mine from how are we going to do this? Because people really do need to get outside. Great comments. Thank you very much. And it looks like Trish has a question.
Yeah, and this is related. Can somebody update me? What is the status of our free bus? Is it 200? I mean, does the city have the option to reroute it? Or, I mean, can we somehow leverage opportunity with our free bus so people can move?
Whoops. Trish, you locked up a little bit, but I think I can start in on the answer because I think I understand the question. Wally and I will probably have to get back to this group and provide some information, but that's a really good suggestion. The Route 200 is I believe, Wally, is partly funded by the city of Issaquah and partly funded by Metro. Metro is currently going through a series of cuts that will be in place for quite a while. Not sure where the 200 bus is on that list, but it is. And we have input on the route, but we don't get to decide the route, Trish. So that is a Metro decision right now. To me, I think it's really bizarre because it starts and it sort of does an arc through town instead of a loop through town. So Wally, we should bring some more information back to this group on the possibility of that being a foul weather connector between different things that are going on in town. Thank you, Trish. I'm going to go to Ron for a comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So when you did the parade, I thought that was a great idea. Maybe we could take something like that and break it into a Halloween parade. That way we have social distancing, people are staying somewhat apart, and we get to see the mayor going through all the neighborhoods again.
You're not the one who has to sit in the vehicle for 2.5 hours. I love the parade. The parade was fantastic. We've had a suggestion like that as well. We're probably going to get a lot of creative suggestions. This afternoon, I was talking with Council President Hunt to one of the managers up at Timber Ridge, which is a senior living facility up in Tallis. And they've been having balcony events where there is a little parade of sorts around the bottom of the building, and all the residents have a balcony in that, and they all come out and they all get to watch the activity that's happening. And we're trying to find some ways to bring some joy and connection to the senior population because Council President and I are very worried about their isolation. So parade ideas have come up in a number of different ways. I know the Highlands, this is one of the biggest nights of the year for them. And they're concerned too. So great idea. Probably means I have to wear a costume, which I can probably find a costume, but we'll add that one to the list, Ron. Thanks. And I'm going to go to Jason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You could just get one of those cannons that shoot candy and you just shoot all over the place.
I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to do that, but boy, I would if I could.
Well, what's it say that hasn't been said?
Wally's saying, no, you can't.
I think these once a month meetings, the commentary tonight has just been fantastic. Piggybacking on almost what everybody said. I do think there was a lot of information. I wish I had a little bit more time to digest Wally's fantastic slides and presentation to actually give you guys more solid feedback. But just a few things while listening to everybody and thinking about it. I do have to agree with Sashi. Pandemics also have a timeline. And I really do think, regardless of when this ends and everybody's talking about what post-recovery will look like, the bottom line is people want to be with one another. So I think you're still going to have concerts. I still think you're going to have sporting events. I mean, people, that's just how we're wired. The part that is unforeseeable is how we use office spaces. Because if there's a financial incentive to work from home, I think those type of things will change. But ultimately, we've already seen with the school districts how devastating it is for children not to be with one another. Even for parents, I mean, you can see in the news about people's mental health and the amount of depression that I think has gone up threefold. So I think you will see eventually when this dies, and just like the Spanish flu, it will come to an end. You're going to see people get back together. So I think when it comes to things like the mobility master plan and things like that, I agree with the mayor. The vision is not for a year in, it's for the next 10 years, it's for the next 15, and it's more a policy and a kind of a mission statement. So again, I kind of like the idea. These things evolve, they're adaptable. We don't need to correct grammar on this page and that page in order for it to keep moving through. As far as Marisol's comment, I thought she had a tremendous comment about new residents not being able to connect. And I never thought about that, about people that have been moving into Issaquah prior to March, maybe the last 6 months. So I think that was, maybe a blind spot for the Recovery Task Force, kind of forget about the fact that such a wonderful community like ours is continually drawing in new people. And unfortunately, some of those people might have fallen through the cracks because, again, they're not able to go to their PTA meetings. They're not able to go to the parks. And if they're in the parks, they have to stay away from this family and that family. So it's a little harder for those people to make the connections, even along with the whole Seattle freeze thing that I'm sure everybody else knows about too. So having that, I think, would be good to address. And then I also think advertising, because some of the comments that I heard tonight, the city's doing. So you have like the green necklace, which is connecting trails and connecting things. The vision that the city has laid out over the last couple years, I just don't know if enough people know about it. And so I think one area where the city could maybe get better is using advertising or branding or social media to get our message out. I mean, I forget who asked the question about the neighborhoods and the Halloween, and then Wally had it like right there. It was all of a sudden it shows right up in your chats. I mean, he had an answer for it, but a lot of people don't know it, even though it's a free link for all of us to go to and join in and have a wonderful discussion. So somehow getting the city, and I know we have tools like the Issaquah channel, and I know we have social media. How do we drive people to look at it, I guess is the best way to say it. How do we get people in the community to take a look at it? Is it through flyers in the mailbox? Is it through a save the date type thing? I'm not quite sure. But ultimately, some of these things are happening. I don't think people know about it. So I think a lot of the commentary here tonight was fantastic. I'm kind of Wally gave a fantastic presentation. I'm just trying to digest it all. And hopefully I'll have some better commentary next time around. But thank you.
Your comments are awesome, Jason. As you're talking, here's what I'm thinking is, how do you find out who the new folks are in town? And, for the city, for those that are in a house, we can obviously tell who got a water account since March. And so we can see new folks that way, but we can't see the renters. And so we'd have to kind of figure out, how do we cross all populations in order to be able to do something? And you're really, really hammered on the point of communication. Like Mike said, I think what we're really talking about tonight with this group is a pre-recovery plan. And at some point, we will move into a recovery plan, but we're creating the elements of a pre-recovery plan where we still have restrictions, but we are trying to promote healthy connections. We're trying to create activities that can still be done. And we're going to beef up our communication plan because we're not sure that we're getting to everybody and getting them all the information they need. I mean, we know everybody buys groceries. We can definitely have signboards and A-frames that say COVID crazy, check out this stuff, and give people the ideas and the list of things we're doing, because everybody buys food. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from the group. Maybe give your head nod if that's where you all seem to be as well too. We're definitely pre-recovery, but we can still create a work plan of items to do during this phase.
And
So
just one more thing, Madam Mayor, is I know Wally asked us a question that I don't know if everyone's been answering, but I would also agree kind of with Mike. I think looking kind of more at the short-term lens is probably really the focus, because I think everybody agrees we're definitely, nobody really knows if we're quite in the middle, if we're towards the tail? Is there a second wave? This is our first winter with this virus. So again, I think the long term will work itself out. I do think it's going to be more normal than people think, just because human nature. Humans want to be together. Humans want to go out to dinner with one another. As much fun as it is cooking at home, we want to go back to Jack's. I want to go have a drink with my favorite people at Jack's and hang out for a little bit. So I do think it'll be more normal. It's really kind of the office spaces and things like that, the financial incentive from working from home that could possibly change in the long term. So
Very much so. I see that Trish has posted a comment. We do have Welcoming Week event coming up soon. It's virtual. It isn't usually virtual, but we'll definitely be promoting that. And I see that Mike has another comment. Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Just to kind of tag on to this pre-recovery planning discussion and kind of the framework. And you touched on it at the beginning regarding the impact that this is having on the city and the ability of the city to deliver services. And I think maybe if we get more information about the city's kind of circumstance, financial and otherwise, at the next meeting, maybe we can add on to this. But the city's role in the recovery when we get there is going to be its capacity to lead and participate and deliver is going to be different. And so part of the thinking needs to be, who else do we need to start working to pull in to help? What partnerships should we be working on? I know a number have been created as you've moved along through here, but as we move toward that recovery, to actually help in that recovery phase of this, because the city will have less capacity than it did pre-pandemic to actually lead that and or participate. So I think that's an important part. And then one more piece, and that is building the public's confidence that it's safe to go out and be together again. Back to Jason's point, everybody wants to do that. I think that is our nature. We want to be together. That contact's important, but people are going to be anxious and afraid. And so working with the public health partners, et cetera, to help, really do what can we do as we come out the other side to build that public confidence back up. Kind of add-ons here.
That is a great point, Mike. One sec. I've been hearing lots of comments from residents who say, don't tell me what I can't do, tell me what I can do safely. A lot of the messages are, you can't, you can't, you can't. And what they want to hear is what they can do so they understand their options. I think the health messaging is sort of structured that way to stop you from doing something that might be dangerous, but it's not intuitive to everybody about what they can do, safely. From what we know now. And you're right. I invite everybody to bring a box of Kleenex for when we bring a finance director here, because the story's a bad one. And like Mike said, our resources have been cut dramatically. We expect them to stay cut for a long time. We're going to get through this because of the partnerships we've developed and the additional partnerships that we are going to cultivate. Because a city government of our size just does not have the bandwidth or the power to solve some of these amazingly huge issues without other government entities, nonprofits, community groups, volunteers. More than ever, I think we're going to be calling on the community to help out and volunteer to do certain things, because we're just going to be a smaller city government for a while. So thanks for that point. And I see that Wally has posted some information on Welcoming Week, and that Trish would like to make a comment.
Yeah, this is ad hoc or random, but it's related. And it has to do with community health. I know when we talked about that goal, there was mention about, where can people go to have the diagnostic test as well as the antibody test. And I don't know if this is something that the city wants to advertise or if they feel it's their place, but right now, BloodWorks Northwest, if you donate your blood, you get a free antibody test. And so it's a way to encourage, if anybody's interested in finding out what the results are, and if they're able to donate blood, I know a lot of people can't, and they need blood donations. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit.
It is, and it does tie into that public health messaging, and it's great because it may be a way to get more people to donate blood. So
right, and they're not advertising it well. The only reason why I know is I donate on a regular basis every 55 days, and the last time I went in there, They said, oh yeah, we're now testing everybody's blood for antibodies.
Wow, that's great. Well, City Administrator Bobkowitz is taking lots of notes. We have a strong communications team, and this may be something that we can piggyback on with giving it a wider audience by promoting it as well.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Marlene says, though, she thinks it just goes through September. So we'll have to see. Back to you, Jason.
So just real quickly on the health topic, because it's correlated, maybe something as far as the recovery task force or just the city government is trying to encourage people to get their flu vaccinations this year.
Yep.
And trying to make it fun, maybe make a little syringe with a smiley face saying, make sure to get your flu vaccine, do your part to make sure that we have as healthy winter as we can. I know there's a lot of PSAs already out there talking about it, but it's always good to hear it again.
Mm-hmm.
I know, for a couple of years prior to COVID, it's nothing against them. It's more like I didn't want to sit in a Safeway for 35 minutes. I'm healthy, so I didn't really think about it. This year, I went and got it right away. I think in February, really late. And you can bet this year I'm going to be getting it as soon as actually probably late September. So just reminding people that it is intertwined with COVID, because this year we want to keep our hospitals free and clear for any type of uptick with the virus. So again, I know it's not necessarily COVID, but reminding everybody in Issaquah, get your flu vaccinations.
Oh, it's an added complexity, though. You're absolutely right. So thank you for that. Definitely can look at that. I am not seeing any additional comments or questions in the chat box, so I'll give it a few minutes to see if anybody has anything else, and if not, we will end up wrapping up. So I can't remember who made the comment. It might have been Jason, but I too am awed by what this group comes up with. The suggestions and the thoughts, you definitely have met my goal of having a very, very diverse group of residents and business owners so that we are looking at all different aspects of it. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the agenda, and I think City Administrator Bobkowitz, I'm not sure if there are any other announcements besides the date of the next meeting, but the next meeting is October 8th at 4 p.m. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add for the group?
Just my thanks for the robust discussion. I do have a lot of notes. I think we'll do our best to have more information about Halloween at your October 8th meeting, more information about the communications issues. I'll try to get someone from the County 211 operation. I think it'd be good to hear from them about the services that they provide. And we'll come back with a draft plan based on these discussions. I think it's clear that this is not a post-recovery, this is a pre-recovery plan. So we'll have a draft document and we'll provide in the agenda packet, so you'll have time to review it, and we'll leave time for discussion about that as well at the next meeting. So thank you.
Have our finance director as well.
Oh, and have Beth, yes.
Financial update. Trish, you have a quick question.
Yeah, Wally, can you send us all your PowerPoint?
Sure. Absolutely. I can send it. I think Joanne has the distribution list, so I'll send it to Joanne and pass it along.
Great, thanks.
And Joanne, if you could add a note when you send it out that we did have 5 who could not show up tonight. If they have any comments, that we'll incorporate those into this draft plan as well. That would be great. Well, thank you all again. Great meeting, great group. I appreciate that you are hanging in there with us when I told you this just might be a couple of months, and we're past that now. It's invaluable to Wally and I to be able to meet with you and bounce ideas off of you. And you are helping us help our community. So thank you very much. So we are adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye. Thank you.